Hello, and welcome to How to Play Royal Galea. This game is quite interesting, but it does take some getting used to at first. It has somewhat convoluted rules, but once you get used to them, much like poker or chess or shogi or things like that, you know how to play. Once you know how to ride a bike, you know how to ride it. Same for this game. So, how do we play? Well, first and foremost, this game is split into two main phases, drafting and war. Now, throughout these phases, your goal for the game is to get as many cards as possible. So try and keep that in mind as you're drafting your cards or as you're doing the war phase. Of course, you don't know how these cards will help you currently, but once you play this game once or twice, you'll start to understand which cards are good for what situations. So, how do we do the drafting phase? Well, much like all other Galea games, this is a two-player game. So what you're going to do is you're going to, for this starting draft, deal 5 cards to both players. Now, of course, I'm by myself here, so I'm going to go ahead and act as both myself and my opponent. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at our hand of cards, and we're going to go ahead and pick one of them that we really like. We're like, yep, this one's good. And we're going to put it in our own secret stash to decide. Your opponent shouldn't know what you have in your stash, and that's pretty much it. And of course, my opponent here, they're going to go ahead and look at their hand. They're going to pick their own thing to put into their own secret stash. Now, what you're going to do after this is you're going to go ahead and switch these hands of unchosen 4 cards. You're going to switch them with your opponent, and now you're going to make the same choice. Out of these 4 cards, which one do you like the best? Maybe I'll like this one. My opponent will go ahead and be like, yeah, I think I'll pick this. And now what's going to remain are 6 unchosen cards. Now these 6 unchosen cards are going to make up what's called a war packet. Now these 6 unchosen cards are going to be set to the side and will be separate from either player's secret stash and from other war packets you will make. That's because this drafting phase, will happen 3 times. So that was the first time. So we're going to go ahead and make the same choices. I'm just going to go at random here. Obviously, you would choose and pick which cards you want, but for this demonstration, I'm just going to go at random. Now, these 6 cards now make a new war packet, and then these last ones will become a new hand and war packet. Now, of course, switch hands, pick a new card, and pick a new card. And of course, the last remaining 6 make up the last war packet. Great. So now we're on to the war phase. Both players have 6 cards in their hand. This is their starting stash. These are their starting cards. And there are 3 war packets. Now, when you drafted these cards, you happen to know what each of these war packets have. You don't know exactly what they have, but you know roughly maybe this one has a few spears, this one has a few coins, this one maybe has a few crowns. What you're going to do is the first player, let's say I'm the first player, they're going to go ahead and pick one of these war packets based off of what they think they have and what cards I, of course, have in my hand. So we're going to go ahead and, let's say, pick this guy, and we're going to set these other war packets to the side. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to flip these horizontally between both players. Now, because this camera is a little bit small, I'm going to go ahead and shift it this way. So my opponent is on this side, and I am, of course, over here. Each of these different horizontal cards are considered locations. Now, what you're going to do during your war phase is, since I was the first player, I'll go ahead and go first. What you're going to do is you're going to pick a card in your hand. For example, maybe I'll pick this 5 of spears, and then you're going to put it onto a location with either a matching suit or strictly lower value. So in this case, 5 of spears, I'm going to go ahead and place it underneath this 1 of spears location. So this now belongs to that location. Pretty simple. My opponent's going to go ahead and make a similar choice. They're going to maybe place this 3 of spears onto this 2 of spears. Now again, they can do that because these 2 cards match suit. This card has a spear. This location card is of spear, so you can play spears on spears. Makes sense. Now, another thing you can do on your turn is you can play a lower value card onto a higher value location. For example, this 2 of grain, I can play it to this 3 of crown. However, if I were to try and play a 3 of grain onto this 3 of crown, that wouldn't work because they're equal value. So I can only do this because it has a lesser value than this location. And then my opponent is going to go ahead and do the same thing. They're going to make some action. For example, okay, maybe they'll play this 4 of crowns onto this 1 of crown. And we'll go back and forth like this. Like, oh, maybe I'll place this here and contest that. And my opponent will maybe, oh yeah, let me place that there. Right? And so on and so forth. And this back and forth will continue over and over until any player has run out of cards. For example, this is cheating, but let me just say that I put all of my cards here. and my opponent has randomly distributed their cards there, right? Now that I have no cards in my hand, the round immediately ends. So my opponent wouldn't even be able to play a sixth card because the moment my hand is empty, the round ends. So that does mean that I get an extra card play over my opponent, but such are the qualms of my opponent, I suppose. And now onto the gathering portion of the war phase. What we're going to go ahead and do is look at each location. For example, this location all the way on the left, I have a value of 3 plus 4 plus 5, that's 12. And my opponent has a value of 2. Now 12 is higher than 2. That means I beat them at that location. And what that means is I will pick up the cards that I played and the location card itself. And those will go ahead and go into my stash, which I will then retrieve later for different war packets. And then my opponent goes ahead and picks up their own card that they played at that location and puts it back into their own secret stash. And we just keep going through each of these. So my opponent won this location, they get the location card, plus, of course, their own card. This location over here with a 5 and a 4, I won, so I get the 5, the 1, and my opponent gets their card back. This one over here, 2, and also 2. So what this is a tie. Now what happens here is, since it's a tie, all the cards in this location will be removed from the game. So this 2, this 3, this 2 are all removed from the game. Of course, no one contributed to this, so this is also a tie. This disappears. And over here, I have a 5 of crown, they have a 4 of crown. I win the location and pick this up, and my opponent goes ahead and picks this up. It is now my opponent's turn. They will go ahead and pick up one of these war packets, and we will repeat this until there are no more war packets remaining and we have finished the game. Now, one more rule, just to put it out there, is that if you can't play a card to a location, the card is too high value to place anywhere else. For example, this 5 of spears. I can't play this 5 of spears onto any of these locations because this is a shield, this is coin, 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 cups, grain. And of course, I can't play this to any of these other locations because 5 is the highest value. I can't play it to equal value. So what do? Well, I can play this card face down underneath any location. And in case someone wins that location, they will pick up both the location card, the card underneath it, and of course their own cards. So let's say there was a 4 there and a 1 here. Well, guess what? My opponent wins this location. So of course they will pick up the location card, any face down cards underneath it, and of course their own card. And then I will just get my measly return. After we have collected all of the different things, again, we would do the war phase a third time since there are 3 war packets. Once everyone has collected everything, whoever has the most cards in their stash wins the game. So I have 13, while my opponent has 13. So in this case, because we tied, we actually have to do a tiebreaker, which is pretty convenient for the rules explanation. But just know that if you have 12 cards and your opponent has 10, then you have won, right? As long as you have strictly more cards than your opponent, then you have won the game. Now, in case of a tie, what you're going to do is you're going to count up all of the values of this. So 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 2 plus 1, so on and so forth. And your opponent is going to do the same. And once you get these total values, whoever has the lowest total value wins the game. That's the tiebreaker. If you have the lowest value, it means you won the same amount of locations with less powerful cards, which proves that you are truly something to marvel at. So, one quick overview. What you're going to do during the drafting phase is you're going to get dealt 5 cards each. You're going to pick one of those cards to keep, and your opponent is also going to pick one to keep. And then you're going to switch hands. You're going to pick one more to keep, and then these remaining 6 unused cards becomes a war packet. And you're going to do this 3 times. Once you've done it 3 times, you start the war phase. During the war phase, you will choose one of these war packets and you will start playing cards to each of these locations. You can play a card to a location if it has a lower value than the location, or if it's the same suit as the location. Then, once the active player run out of cards, the moment they do, whoever has the highest total value at each location wins the location and any cards underneath it and puts it into their own personal stash. Any locations that have ties will be removed from the game, and you will continue doing this for 3 more times until all the war packets have been done. Then final scoring, whoever has the most cards wins. And that's how you play Royal Galea. Thanks for watching.